All right. I just finished a pretty long episode with my good friend Bailey. It was about an hour and a half, the longest episode to date. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of what's in it. There's a lot of stuff that we get into in this one. A lot of fun. I feel like there's a lot of value in this for anybody who's interested in learning how to grow their own personal brand or any brand that they work for or are starting on their own in general. Give it a listen. Let me know what you think, and be sure to subscribe. Yeah, that's all I got. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. Hello and welcome to episode number 22 of the After Hours podcast. Here with me today I have the general manager. If that's wrong, correct me. The general manager of Dare Rising. This is Bailey, and I did not do this prior. But is your last name pronounced Cortez? Or Cortese?
So my actual real last name is Cortese.
Okay.
But it's the way this is spelt and put out there, and everybody else calls me as Cortez, and I just go with that. So
yeah, and
it works out right.
I know you went by Cortez, and then I literally have your last name written in front of me, and I always do this, and I forgot to do it this episode because
it's
I don't know why. But all right, Bailey Cortese, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you coming on this one. It should be a fun episode. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more.
Agreed. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
Cool. Awesome. Well, first question in these episodes is I always try to make it at least. So what was your first encounter with the esports community? Not necessarily your first job or role or title or whatever that is, but like the first time you found out what esports was.
First time I found out what esports was, it was more of because I've always been in the Call of Duty scene since I've been around in 2010, 2011. For content creation purposes, it was mostly just Call of Duty is what I saw. And when I really got into it, it was the Black Ops 2 era where Complexity had this great roster that continued to just dominate. I think it was like Clayster on the at the time. I can't remember if Parasite was on the roster. It was just a stacked roster that just kept winning. And obviously I was I used to follow what Optic was doing because obviously they were from our scene of like the whole Call of Duty, whether it was like sniping montages, things like that.
Yep.
I always followed what they did, but I was never like wicked into the whole esports aspect because I was just younger. I was like 14 maybe, like maybe I was 13. I didn't really care so much for it. I just cared more about, hey, I'll make videos with some friends and have a chance to possibly make money one day or something from it. Like that's where I was at that point in time. But I just remember Black Ops 2 when I was really watching esports, and that's just what really kind of got me going. That's when I really started passionately following what esports was and kind of how it was important and where it would go from there. So that's where I really got into it.
Cool. So obviously you see all that happening and you become a fan of the brands that you become a fan of. At what point did you decide that there might be a space for me? I might be able to carve my own little, area out of this industry that you could start to build a name for yourself?
Well, I was a part of a content creation brand within Call of Duty at one point, and it was called Nexus. It was not anything huge that people outside of our little bubble of Call of Duty content would know. It was I was doing that, and I was approached by the organization that is now known today as Noble. I'm not sure if they're still doing what they're doing today, but I was approached by them and said, hey, can you put together a content side for our organization? We'd love to see what you could do. And that's where I really got my first taste of what esports was, because I agreed to it. I was like, this is really where I want to go with it. Content creation and my small of aspect of just making sniping montages and things of that nature. I did not think we're going to be the future. We're not going to be like the most successful aspect that I could go with. And I was getting older, so I was more intrigued by business side of things. Like, where could I somehow find a career within video games? So I was like, this is a great starting point. So I left what I was doing at the time with all of my great friends that have made it to bigger and better things at one point. And that was where I found my space. That's where I found more of what my niche was, where I was happy, where I was comfortable. And I worked with Noble for a period of time. And from there, I kind of just moved on to other things at that point. But it's where I got my first individual start into esports. And that's where I really got to see how the business side of things are ran, what costs looked like, what was important, what wasn't important, things like that.
Now, I'm not. So I know a little bit about Noble. Like I know the brand and all that.
Hmm.
I never held a position at like in an organization really anywhere aside from
Hmm.
Sector 6. What did compensation look like back then? I know there's a big, like, there's always a controversy of do you work for free, do you not? I
Hmm.
have a pretty good understanding, I think, of what compensation looked like for, early on organizations 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But, without getting too far into it, talk through what that looked like and what motivated you to stay on.
So for me, I've always been this was back in about 2014.
Okay.
So, and so that's 5 years ago,
Yep.
5 years younger. I'm 17 years old. I'm not really thinking too much in depth about how I could be making all this money. I have so much opportunity, anything like that. I was thinking more about kind of like how when you're in college and you're going for an internship, you kind of think to yourself like, oh, of course I'd love to make money. I'd love to get paid, but I have to kind of I have to find my stepping stone, and I have to kind of go with the path that's like, created for me. Like you, of course, can carve your own path. You can kind of go with your own ways with it. But I'm a huge advocate in thinking of the idea that, yeah, don't work for free, but take opportunities if you get opportunities. And nobody was jumping down the gun or like jumping down my throat to say, hey, come work for me.
Right.
That was my first little offer. So compensation back then, especially in esports back in like 2014, unless
Yeah.
you're a player within an industry or higher level management,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really looking at being paid. I wasn't paid, at least. I was given sponsor product whenever there was an opportunity.
Right.
There were exclusive sponsor things for management, quote unquote, within the organization. I was considered part of that since I had my own little branch of people to run. So like I can't remember what PC company it was, but there was a company that we worked with that was like, instead of paying $1,200 for a whole gaming PC, they would only charge management people like $600. So it was like a whole 50% off for management. Like the company's not really making money on that,
Right.
but they're still covering their costs for what they can. So that was something like, it was more about getting my foot in the door and making sure that I had an opportunity to kind of continue from there. I wasn't so worried about money at the time.
Right.
So that's back then, especially. Like, it'd be completely different now. So, but I wasn't really making anything back then. It was just more about where can I go from here, and can I focus on what can I turn it into instead of what am I focused on now.
Right. Yeah, and I guess another big thing to consider is you were 17. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're definitely still in school to some extent.
Just graduated in May.
Okay, you had just graduated. Were you going to college also?
Yep, I got my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
I have an associate's and a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So
So you were also doing that, and I assume for some point living at home still, or did you go away to school? I mean, you were not really worried about where you were living. You were either dorming.
yeah, I wasn't worried about bills.
Yeah.
If that's what it gets to. Like I had a car insurance bill, which was easy to cover. I
Yeah.
always worked a part-time job from the time I was 16 even until now, like either part-time or full-time job. So back then I wasn't worried about money, really.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that's the other. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It since you weren't too worried about, your bills or any type of money that you needed to come up with to pay your bills. You could focus on doing the things like that to help grow a brand that you're a part of, and growing, whether it's the Noble brand or any other brand or your personal brand. Like, you're going to be doing whatever you were doing to some extent because you enjoyed
Yep.
doing it. Why not apply it to something and then have a case study of like, hey, I built this part of this brand and I grew it from, for example, 0 to 100,000 fans or whatever it is, in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And then, you go to sell that to a bigger brand or a competing brand or whatever. And then,
Yep.
then that's when you start to ask for the money. So a lot of people,
Exactly.
I feel like a lot of people are expecting to get paid with no experience and no case study, or they come in with no name, and yes, there's value in time, but if nobody knows that you're going to be worth it at that time, people aren't going to necessarily take a risk on you, especially because like
Absolutely.
I feel like resumes in esports are very, very, what's the word, exaggerated, I guess.
Yes,
Anybody
yes.
could be a part of an organization for 12 to 18 months and be the social media manager, but like
Yep. What did you do that was different
Exactly,
than what
yeah.
some other social media manager would do? And
Yeah.
I completely understand where you're going with that for sure.
I think
Um,
yeah.
Well, I know that you hit the nail on the head where I think people come in and they think that just because they may be a little bit older, whether that's like, I'm only 22.
Right.
And I say only like that, like that's super young or super old, but for our industry, that's kind of it's kind of a midpoint.
Yeah.
That's you got kids, not kids, but you got young adults that are trying to be either pro players, they're trying to be content creators that are all, they could be 16 plus. We'll just go with the 18 mark. I'm 22, I'm kind of in that mid range now, and I'd say, like I said, I started the whole esports thing back in 2014, so 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I have about 5 years of experience now through content creation, social media, through the business side of things, a partnership manager, accounts manager, all that kind of stuff like that. And even I realize, though, in this industry, we're in an industry that's ran by very wealthy people that, again, we don't really have that whole hierarchy of people that are in their 40s or 50s that are kind of higher level management. And then you got the people in their 30s that have been grinding the scene for 10 years that are kind of at that middle point, and the people that are roughly, my age that are sitting here saying like, oh, I'm making my entryway into it. So like where I'm getting at with it is these very wealthy people that kind of run our industry realize that we are younger. We are not easily manipulated because we understand what like the space is and where its potential can be. But we know that there's somebody out there that can do the same thing as me that'll work for less. And these people know that. So you have to realize within this industry that, yes, fight for your value, but you're not always going to get your value in this industry, especially in this industry, because there is somebody out there that just loves what they do and is willing to either do it for free or much less than what you are. So you have to really prove, like you're just saying, because like people have exaggerated resumes, you really have to prove why you're different and why you are worth that dollar amount that you're trying to go for.
Yeah, so exactly. I mean, like, granted, there is the difference of if you are the type of person who's going to take work home with you and you're going to work really hard, or you're really good at what you do. Nobody like you mentioned that there's a lot, the money doesn't necessarily, the money in the industry don't necessarily know, or I'm sorry, the people in the industry are going to look to try and find somebody who's cheaper that's going to do the same thing. They are not necessarily going to know who's going to do XYZ better. So if you put it out there and you have case studies that you could show that you're really good at what you do, like obviously that's going to get you a better chance. But obviously you have to understand that there's going to be some money that they want to have saved.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's business. It's a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, people are getting into this space with however many millions of dollars, running, either starting a brand from zero or taking over a brand. And there is a lot of money that goes into the player salaries, the travel accommodations, in the CDL, there's they're paying for the venues and all of that. Like there are so many expenses that people don't understand. And if they could save on the salary by hiring some 18-year-old kid who's going to post, content on social media as opposed to somebody who's been in the space for a really long time and is really, really good at it, but they only need somebody to post and not necessarily be that guy, they're going to save the $30,000 a year on that person.
Exactly. And but the thing is I don't blame them either. Like I want to be able to say, hire everybody, give them above the value of what they should be getting so everybody can make money. These millionaires have the money, but that's not business.
Right.
Like you just said it yourself. Go for the 18-year-old who either is in their senior year of high school or freshman year of college that they have their set schedule of time. They're not available to, whether it's to watch the content, watch esports that are going on during their classes or homework or projects, whatever they're doing, but they're able to make the post, especially to a younger generation because they understand it. And again, you're going to get an 18-year-old for cheaper than you'll get the 22-year-old, the 25-year-old. They can keep going up the ladder. So why not do that? Especially because I think you hit the nail on the head as well by saying a lot of people don't really understand the costs that go behind having a team, especially a franchise team.
Yeah.
But you're talking for a industry like Call of Duty, even a year ago, depending on the success of the team, you're talking thousands of dollars just for one player every month. And when I say thousands, obviously it's not like just $2,000. You're talking $5,000+ a player. You got the 5 players. You keep going from there. Exactly. And then you got like you said, the whole operations cost for management to keep going. You got their travel costs. You got their food stipends. Lodging, all that kind of stuff. It really does add up. So they're going to find ways to cut costs anywhere possible because it is a business.
Yeah. And like another thing to consider too is there are like the industry right now is exploding, absolutely exploding. 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago was I think when Overwatch League was announced. That was the first franchise league. them and League of Legends both became franchise leagues. There's a buy-in. There's multiple millions of dollars spent just to play in the league.
Yep.
But before that, that wasn't a thing. There was a lot of relegation. It was put a team together, compete against XYZ, go up a gauntlet, and make it into the biggest league that you could be in.
Yep.
Fast forward 2 years, there's all this money coming in. But now I'm going back and forth, so just bear with me a little bit here. So if you rewind, for me, I've been in the industry about probably 6 years to some extent, at least following it. It was a lot smaller. There's definitely not these multi-million-dollar contracts, these multi-million-dollar buy-ins and all that stuff. Like, it's only going to continue to grow. Like, yes, there is arguments that it's a bubble and it's going to pop and everybody's going to just kind of wither out. And there's going to be this terrible downturn. Whether that happens or doesn't, the industry, I think, will bounce back. But, like, for me, from a personal standpoint, when we started Sector 6 / Esports Apparel, it was, we never took we weren't at a point where we could take a dime out of what we were making. Everything went back into the company.
Yes.
Building a brand is not necessarily where overnight you put an idea together, you get a couple clients or a couple partners, a couple sponsors, and you just start pocketing money. Like, the money needs to go back into your machine, and you need to grow your machine. For us, we probably went 2.5 years before we even took anything, like, personally. Everything went back into growing the company. Like, obviously, even then, we probably shouldn't have taken money out because we were still all working, like, our regular jobs and all that stuff. But I guess what I'm getting at is, overnight, you don't start in a career and then immediately start to take money from it. At some point, you need to get your name known, or you need to build an infrastructure, or you need to get with, whoever you're going to get with and figure out how you're going to build your brand or your personal brand or your company, whatever it is. Like, there has to be some time and effort put in. And I think, as time goes on, if people aren't doing it now, it's going to be way harder in a year or 2 years from now to start that if you're not doing it already.
For sure. And I think the one topic I really like to talk about is that whole bubble in esports.
Yeah.
Because obviously you have people on both ends of the spectrum of, oh, it's a bubble, it's going to pop, it's not going to sustain. Then you have the other people that's like, oh, no, it's a perfect industry, it makes sense, it will keep going. I like to be right in the middle there. I think what you'll see someday is, I think you'll see a hard reset in the esports community to figure out more of what's going on. It's a normality now for millions and millions of dollars to come in and invest into a quote unquote tier 1 organization and use all that money to get into franchise leagues, to, hire staff, get content, things like that. And I think that everybody's kind of going that same route, and we're treating it a little bit like traditional sports in the sense that it just, because everyone's doing it, everybody can find money and everybody can do it. And I think that's where you're going to start seeing that little hard reset at some point, that it's, let's evaluate this a little more. Let's see where, is it worth spending $10+ million to get into a franchise league? Is the revenue splits, all the things like that, really worth it? Are we seeing the continued success? And there must be. Like, if people are seeing it, then it's got to be there. But that's where I'm worried that some people just see a quick cash cow and they're like, hey, let me get in, let me get my money in, and let me sell my part and get out. And that's where I think, again, we're going to possibly see that little hard reset, that the way we've been going about it in our industry. And again, I've never worked with the whole type of investment with tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, so I could totally be wrong. But you really see that there is a chance for it to reset, and have to see, like, we need to reevaluate how we're getting into esports, how we're spending our money, things of that nature. But at the same time, it's video games. Yeah. Girls, boys, male, female, whatever anybody identifies as, people at a young age are playing video games. It's a trend. It's not even just a trend, it's more of a lifestyle now. People are playing video games, whether they're bored, whether they like to, whatever it may be. So video games are going to continue to grow, and as the player base of video games gets larger, so should, it's just kind of common sense, I guess, so should the viewership of esports, whether it's League of Legends, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Rainbow Six, you keep going down that line. And they should see more success. And with that comes more money, comes more power, things of that nature. So I don't think you'll ever see the bubble just pop. I think you'll see a chance where people have that halt, reset, and go at it even harder in a different way. That's what I think you'll possibly see someday.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess I don't know how I feel about the whole argument about the bubble popping or anything like that. But when you see things like, I don't know how closely you follow League of Legends, but Hooney and Vulcan both had buyouts recently. Vulcan, I believe, was on Clutch and was bought out by, I forget who.
I have no idea. I'm not a huge League guy. I follow content on it, but not much more.
I mean, at any rate, $1.5 million contract buyout and $2.3 million contract buyout. Not a
for
salary.
Each individual person?
Correct. Like,
wow.
That is, I mean, there are finer details to it, but like that is Team X wants to purchase wants a player on Team Y, but there's a buyout there that means that Team X has to pay Team Y $2.3 million just to release him from his contract. Like, think about the money in this space. For people who don't understand that, that's
a lot.
That's like that's like mid-tier baseball player, right? There has to be. That's about mid-tier, right, for baseball, football.
I know baseball. A lot of money's dumped into it. If you're important, if you're not important, you kind of sit around there. But for hockey terms, in case anybody's a hockey fan, you're talking a guy that is crucial to the foundation of your team, but is not the most important. Just for most professional sports, basically. I guess.
Yeah, what is a normal? I mean, I know you're a hockey guy, so like, what's a good contract? What's his name? Alex Ovechkin. What did he get paid up until did he retire? No,
he's still playing.
He
makes roughly. He's normally the number one goal scorer every year. He's like the highest in the NHL, 4 goals right now. Like he has a chance to beat the all-time record. He makes roughly around 10 million. Like he's around like 9.7, somewhere in that range. I think is his actual how much he makes yearly. Okay. But then obviously sponsorships and stuff added on top of it. But hockey is probably the most underpaid professional sport in North America.
Yeah.
Other than, you could have lacrosse things like that, soccer. But for like the big sports there of the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL, it's the cheapest one. He's one of the highest athletes in that sense of like skill, caliber, and pay. And that's chump change in the NBA. So
yeah. Yeah.
So it's just So but still though, to go off your point though, $2.3 million just to buy out a contract. That's not including a salary to come. That's not including other cost of, you got to have your social team that's now going to take care of how that process is going to be announced. Have your legal team that's a part of that. You've got so many little factors that, it's organization costs that are already there or operation costs, but all those things are still factored. $2.3 million. Organizations are trying to go out and just get that kind of money for initial investment, let alone just to buy out one player on a contract.
Exactly. 2.3 is even a stretch for some of the organizations that are like trying to ride the middle of the pack wave of just like not franchise type leagues. It's just, I saw the Vulcan one. It was 1.5. That one I saw, I think sometime last week. I was just looking this up and I saw the Hooney one, and I don't know if I missed it or if it was recent, but like crazy. Like that is so much money just being thrown around. And like, I guess that's where I kind of see where the argument of esports being a bubble kind of comes into play, because that money, you go from contracts in League of Legends are pretty big. Like obviously, that can attest to it, but contracts aren't as public. You like LeBron, everybody knows what LeBron James makes. Everybody knows what you just told me what Alex Ovechkin makes. Like it's public knowledge. So when you're throwing around that kind of money and we don't know what the infrastructure behind an organization is for the Call of Duty team or the Overwatch team or whatever it is, you don't really know what kind of money is actually there. There's a lot of, there's a giant, I don't know, there's a veil in front of a lot of organizations. And then when you get behind there and you start looking, you never know what might be back there. I mean, look at Echo Fox. That organization just went under. For a lot of reasons. There's probably more to it than just the money. But you never know what's going on behind closed doors.
Well, in esports specifically, people are all about their image because, again, we are in an industry that's very social media. It's very, what is your public image? What do people think about you? How important do you seem? Because how important you look may kind of showcase the kind of success you get.
Yeah.
From there, or translate to success was the word, the phrasing I was going for. So, for instance, that contract, what'd you say was 2.3 million?
Yeah,
for a buyout.
Was a buyout. Yep.
So, you pay the 2.3 million. Of course, in the moment, they're not sitting there between the two organizations saying, oh, we're just going to go for a very high buyout to look important. But the reason that number will get out there is for the reason being like, now we look like we just spent $2.3 million on this player. Let's maximize our total outreach on this so we can kind of take as much, get as much of not profit in money sense, but profit as much as we can off of this, whether it's through engagement, impressions, interaction, things of that nature. So it adds value to what they're doing so they can find a way to seem more important, whether that brings in, more fans now because they brought over the player because of his fan base or her fan base. And then from there, it showcases to someone like me who I may not follow League passionately, but I'm not going to forget that number now.
Yeah.
Like that's $2.3 million. I'm going to follow that and say, why is this person worth $2.3 million?
Exactly.
And I think, again, like I was saying, though, the industry is very about your image and how that look translates to your audience. So if your audience thinks you got $2.3 million to spend on one player, they think you've got a lot of wiggle room on what you could do in general, and they'll support you thinking about the opportunities are endless if you could spend $2.3 million on one individual.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's a really interesting way to. I didn't even break it down that far. Like obviously a big number is a big number. That weight makes waves everywhere. But like when you break it down that far, that's a very interesting way to look at it too, and definitely, I mean it's definitely left impressions on, everybody involved in it, or not even involved.
Sure.
Like people who follow it religiously and people who just kind of follow League casually. Everybody knows.
Exactly.
So it's interesting to see the least. All right. I totally did not expect that tangent to go that way. But I guess to bring it back on to track a little bit here, I did want to talk to you a little bit about Dare and what your role is within Dare Rising. I guess. Is it still Dare Rising? Or you just I know
Yes.
it is, but you still refer to it in shorthand as Dare? Like how do you guys actually call yourselves?
So whenever we're talking to somebody outside of our industry of the whole content creation, we say Dare Rising, but
Gotcha.
within our whole little community, it's just called Dare.
Okay.
It's kind of like how FaZe is FaZe Clan, but you just call them
Gotcha.
FaZe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Optic Gaming's Optic, things like that.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't politically incorrect here.
You're totally fine. Trust me, like we were discussing my whole last name earlier.
Yeah.
I don't really get offended much on that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
It's honest mistakes or it's somebody just doesn't know and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's totally.
I hear that. So I know you are the general manager, but outside of that, that's about all I know. So what does your day-to-day look like within the organization? What are your plans and goals that you handle on a day-to-day basis that helps Dare grow?
So with my title as general manager, it's the word I really like to emphasize there is just general. I have a hand in everything in the sense of not because I want to be, in control or possessive. It's more of I will work with our editing team on what videos need to be done. I work with our graphics team on making sure branding stays consistent, making sure designs are being pumped out. Our players and content creators are being taken care of in the sense of if they're putting in and paying for designs from our designers or whatnot, like just making sure the process is efficient and making sure everybody's being, taken care of. Because I've noticed with a free-for-all in the sense of you just kind of let people handle themselves. Sometimes it doesn't work because some people are more efficient than others and time management, things like that. I'm sure you're well aware of it, especially running your own business.
Yeah.
That, sometimes you just have to oversee the process, make sure it's clean and efficient. But so our editing and design team, I kind of oversee that. Our content creation, whether it's through posting our social media on, Twitter, making sure our Twitch schedule stays consistent, making sure that business side of things are handled, whether that's, re-updating a partnerships deck, making sure our partners are currently taken care of, making sure we're coming up with marketing campaigns, like making more outreach, trying to get more with partners, trying to make sure that we're opening up communication for more relationships. I kind of handle an aspect of everything. I still sit down and create content. I still work, and I go and negotiate with players and do their whole contracts. I work with our partners and negotiate those contracts, make sure those marketing campaigns are done. I literally have a hand in everything, and I'm not trying to sound too important with that. It's just my day-to-day it's a free-for-all every day of what needs to be taken care of, what's most important, and let's get it done while we can get it done at the best way possible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned marketing campaigns. Now, does that for you? I think that's probably different from organization to organization, and then like team focused, content focus versus like a company like mine.
Mhm.
What do you like? What's a marketing campaign typically look like for you?
For us, we like to set out the date of the kind of the length of the partnership, of course. So let's just say it's a year long. What are our goals after the whole year? Is it to increase? Of course, you're working with a company, whether it's for product or a service. That company wants to generate revenue, of course, or brand awareness. And we normally like to sit down with the company and say, what is it you're more focused on? Of course, you want to make money, but what's more important for you right now? Do you want to grow brand awareness, or do you want to make the absolute highest cash value right now while you can, any way possible? And of course, you always get the answer of, oh, I want to do both. So that's where you really have to sit down with them and say, well, here's multiple ways we can go about it. Either A, we push your product to try to get maximum revenue for yourself out of that product, or we push your brand and allow the consumer to, generate their own idea on what they should buy, what service they should do, things of that nature. So once we have that kind of figured out, we sit down and say, all right, with a stream team of 40 to 50 people, reaching this many people, what's the most efficient way to get that name out there, or this product or service out there? And we kind of sit down and review and say, here's the people within this industry and community, here's the people within these communities, which people are going to be the most efficient, which people should we kind of make the face of this push, things of that nature. So we sit down and review that. We sit down with our designers and say, what do you guys think is the most important aspect of this product or service? Like, what should we be promoting the most about it from a design standpoint? And then we sit down with our players and say, what do you enjoy the most about this if you were to have this? Like, what stands out to you? So we try to get, a viewpoint from everybody, and then we generate, here's how it should be promoted. Here's how it should be created. Here's how it should be pushed in front of everybody. Because sometimes you can't just force a service or a product on anybody.
Right.
It has to be something that's just kind of there. So the one example I really like to use for our organization is Rode microphones. Mm-hmm. They don't work with anybody else as at least as a partnership within the esports and content creation community. We are an exclusive brand of theirs. They work with just us. What I love working with them is their product is all about audio. Right now, we don't have this conversation without microphones. Cameras don't pick up great audio without microphones. You continue to go down that whole process, like podcasts, things like that.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we're on a podcast right now, but just in general, like we're over Discord, or whatever it is, audio is key. Without audio, what is there to listen to? So we sit down and we say, all right, this has a clean cut, nice black look with a high quality product. How do we go out there and make sure it's promoted properly? And that's where we get in front of people that it's, if you want to be taken serious, act serious. You want to sound great, be great. Like, go get the right thing. Yeah. Go spend and invest into yourself to make sure you have the right product. And Rode has loved that whole initiative that we've taken with them. And I think we've been with them since 2017. So that's a 2-year partnership that's just ongoing. And I don't think it's ever going to really end unless, something happens to our brand or their brand, in the sense of whether it's the most PR nightmare or our brand goes under or theirs does, whatever happens, like, knock on wood, I guess, when saying that. But there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And I think a lot of brands just kind of go into a meeting when it comes to partnerships or marketing campaigns, and they kind of sit down and say, oh, we have X, Y, and Z amount of fans and this amount of engagement. And, we'll just slap your logo everywhere. And it's just like, you get that all the time. You know it as well.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's coming up with an actual idea of how does this work?
Yeah.
So, for instance, like, you have the whole apparel, you have the jerseys. It's like our initiative would be, how do we sit down and the wrong word is manipulate, but how do we get our audience to really be intrigued with our apparel? How do we get them really interested in spending their hard-earned cash on what our brand puts out there? Yeah. Whether it's because it's stylish, whether it's because they support, whether it's because they want to be a part of the brand and they think that's going to get them a part of it, whatever it may be. And that's where I don't like to use the word manipulate, but it's kind of a manipulation of your audience to say, like, hey, you want to support us, like, really support us. Yeah. Go out there and wear our apparel, like, showcase you care, just put your money into what our, like, it's a terrible way of saying it. Again, it's all sounding awful, Zach, and I don't want to sound like a terrible person. It's like put your money in our pockets so we can do more kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but it's more of an important thing of, like, hey, you support us, and that's the best thing possible to do. Yeah. And that's amazing. And any organization, including ours, of course, appreciates that. You make $1 off it at the end of the day, and your brand gets out there and you support them, and you're like, hey, thank you for supporting esports. Thank you for supporting a business within esports that's all about growing this community. And then it's the same thing from the organization standpoint, and so much more, of course, from everybody. Like, everybody has their own personal reasons, of course. I don't want to sound like a monster, of course, when I'm saying any of this. I don't want to sound like I'm a terrible person.
No. Like, I guess I went to cut you off, and then I held back a little bit. But you say it like, pay for our stuff, support us, and type and all that. But like, in reality, that money coming in, whether it's from a fan or some random person or whoever it is, some casual supporter, like, at the end of the day, that's what helps businesses like yours grow, because your business is a lot more about brand versus the product. People follow you guys because they like, not necessarily just the Dare logo, but everything that it means. Those types of people are going to be the ones that are always going to be there to support you. So without them, they might have the money to throw around. You're not necessarily taking money from people who don't have money. So it's, people. I don't really know where I was going with this, to be honest with you.
It's okay.
But
I know. I was going to say, we kind of backpedal in a second. We're like, wait, hold on. What's the right way to say it?
You're definitely not a monster. That's
thank you.
Money and brand and all of those beautiful things are what make esports, like, that is the heartbeat of esports. The brand power and the people behind it supporting, brands that, not that you guys don't have money, but brands that don't have multiple millions of dollars behind them.
Yep.
That is what supports them. So continue to support those brands, whether it's Dare or it's Sector 6 or it's any company or brand that you're a fan of. Continue to support them, in whatever way you can, whether it's and even if it's just interacting on social media. But if you have the money to buy something, go ahead, help them out.
Exactly. One t-shirt, one hoodie, one jersey, one flag, one lanyard, whatever it is somebody's purchasing, it helps out so much more than the one individual knows. Because whether that's one sale, whether that's $1, whatever it is, it's showcasing A, somebody supports what you do.
Yeah.
B, it does put money back into the business, and C, it just helps everybody out. It's a beautiful system that works, in my opinion, for everybody, because you're not forced to buy apparel. You're not forced to do any of that stuff. Like, you don't. At the end of the day, nobody has to do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just really cool that somebody goes out of their way, spends money that they earned for something, whether you do it or I do it or any other person that's been on this podcast does. It just gives everybody an opportunity to do more, and it gives everybody an opportunity to support and really enjoy what they do, of course. Like, I think you said it perfect.
Yeah. So back about 5 minutes or so ago, you mentioned that people may or may not purchase merchandise because they think that that'll help them join Dare.
Yep.
How does somebody join Dare? I've always I feel like you get this question, or you guys as a whole get this question way more than you want to. So hopefully this could be a sounding board.
What's funny is the question's asked all the time, and I never ever have the same answer. It changes every time in the sense of because we all evolve.
That's true.
We see our rights, we see our wrongs, we see what's important, what's not important. Like, we grow. I did kind of cut you off there. If you have more to that question, go ahead. But if you don't, I can.
That's pretty much it. Is there a founders, like a membership fee that you guys got to pay that you collect from everybody? I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm just kidding.
What we do is most of the time we kind of look and see, because we are a content first brand.
Right.
It's not about where are we at in esports. It's not about what video is most important. Like, it's a family type community that we have around 100 members in Dare, whether that's editors, graphics designers, content creators, management, players within games, things of that nature. That's around 100 people within one brand. Now, when I say that number to most people, they're kind of flabbergasted, because they're like, that's too many people. But it's very well managed in the sense of everybody. It's kind of like at school. You have your own little clique of people. Everybody kind of clicks into their groups in the sense of, our Fortnite guys play Fortnite together. Our Call of Duty guys play Call of Duty together. Apex, the editors do editing stuff. Graphic designers do graphic stuff. So it's kind of like their own little communities within that community. And so to get to the question, though, of like, how does somebody join? What we do is we sit down, and obviously we promote on all of our social media outlets. Twitter obviously is mainly is our main platform. We have 250,000 plus followers on there. And that's where we get the best engagement. That's where we can kind of post freely every day without a schedule of, at 6 p.m. we get the highest, spike of viewership, and a YouTube video showcases that viewership. So it really matters. Like, Of course, we track that stuff, whether it's through YouTube, Twitter, whatever platform. But I mean, you know it as well. Twitter's not very, you don't really have to worry about it as much on Twitter. People just scroll through and kind of interact if they want to.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the point is that Twitter's kind of the main platform that we kind of track who, interacts with our brand, who's showcasing they want to join. We have this motto that, like many organizations have. Ours is like a hashtag that's dare to achieve. And it's a motto that our brand has followed since the day of its creation back in 2011. And we've kind of used that quote now to kind of say, if anybody interacts with our brand or wants to join our brand, be a part of our brand, here is that quote. Like, here's that motto. Follow that motto. Doesn't mean you have to promote that. You don't have to put out hashtag dare to achieve all the time. You don't have to tag us in the tweet of, your live stream or your video. Just live by that.
Yep.
And be a positive personality. But most of the time we try to make sure that we're picking up people that are interested in being a part of the brand. Because we could go out every day. I want to apologize if you hear a train noise into my mic. I live so far from any railroad tracks, and somehow any train is loud enough to be picked up, so my apologies. But
I don't hear it.
Okay, just want to make sure just in case. But we go after people that are interested and want to be a part of the brand. Whether they have, I'll just use live streaming as the example. Whether they have 5 viewers or hundreds of viewers, we sit down and review the individual person. Anybody has value in the sense of business is the way I should say that. But we could go after somebody, that has 100,000 plus YouTube subscribers, gets 10,000 plus views a day. And, you can keep going up that trend to 1 million and 100,000 views a day, all that kind of stuff. But we really want somebody that cares about the brand, because if you don't really care about the brand, you don't really care about the people within it.
Right.
And that's like, it's more of a self-greed. Sometimes you're going to have people like that. And sometimes you're going to have people at the exact opposite end of the spectrum and people right in the middle. So we aim for more of the people in the middle, because you need to have a little self-greed that thinks, I'm going to be successful someday, whether I am given help or not. Like, I'm going to succeed, whether I have the 4 letters of dare in front of my name, whether, I have 100 plus people supporting me behind me, like, I'm going to be successful. And you need to have that drive. And we try to read into a person when they kind of have the interest in joining. But then at the same time, we want somebody that's like, yeah, I'm all about supporting my teammates, making sure that, this person I can help this person find an editor. I can make sure I'm liking and commenting on their videos to show more interaction, kind of keep their hopes and spirits up, because they may not have the greatest viewership that day. But it also showcases that family community vibe. So anyway, to give the short answer to that whole long answer, it's show interest in being in the brand, show that you care about the brand, show that you're driven to be successful, and what makes you different. Like, have a brand, have your own brand. Make sure it's a positive image and be consistent with that branding. Make sure you're putting out the best quality work and again, interaction, so we know that somebody's interested, is very important. But again, we will go out and pick up people that have not heard of Dare before, because of course we're trying to push our own goals and be driven and try to go find stuff.
Right.
But it's more about somebody who cares about the brand, is all about our whole what do you call that? Our mission statement of live this gaming lifestyle in a healthy fashion while promoting that you are the best at what you do, but you're putting your best effort into it, things like that. So it is a question I've gotten a million times, and I've never answered it the same. It's, at the end of the day, be a good person, put your effort in, showcase interest, and you don't have to have the most amazing viewership in the world to be given an opportunity. From there, it's all about what you take advantage of that opportunity with.
Now that, that sounds pretty straightforward. It's one of those, in short, from what I gathered, unfortunately, I'm not a content guy. I'm actually terrible. This podcast is probably, this is definitely the most content I've ever put out.
I think you do a great job, man. Like I was telling you beforehand, I think you do a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I know for my 1 episode a week, if I'm really bad. I've missed 3 weeks. I've been doing this episode 22. So for 25 weeks, I've been doing this, and I missed 3. Now, that is tough for me. I also work a hell of a lot. But I guess where I'm getting is, for content people who are interested in content and they want to join a brand like Dare, the hardest thing is being consistent. It's just like, for me, pushing myself to do an episode if I don't have one already scheduled, like, sometimes could be tough. And like, another big thing for me is like, if the numbers they don't make me feel good. If I'm checking the numbers and like, I'm like, I thought this episode would do great and it flopped, you have to look past that. And and the hugest the biggest, hugest might not be a word in this. I don't know. I'm the biggest hypocrite about this because I always tell people to not look at the numbers. Meanwhile, I refresh 3 or 4 times a day what my numbers are on the most recent episode, and it bothers me that I can't stop doing it. But you just got to kind of push yourself through it. So, for anybody who's trying to join Dare specifically or any other organization, just stay consistent. Just eventually, if you want it that bad, you'll get there. It's one of those things. Just try hard enough, and it'll happen.
Well, we see progression in numbers.
Yeah,
I can guarantee that from your first podcast to now, you've probably improved ways that you go about promoting it, ways you go about how the quality is, like the way the conversation flows, everything about it. Like you've had progression there.
Oh yeah.
And that's where we have to remind one another that in the moment we look at it and say, "Oh, if the numbers didn't do great, it's not that successful," which is completely false. You could spend hours on a project and do amazing, and it just it doesn't get the right type of engagement you want. And again, it's very off-putting for yourself because you track it through the numbers of how successful it is. Whereas when it's somebody from the outside perspective, again, like you just said, you work a lot, you put a lot of effort into it. You've been going for 25 weeks and you've had 22 episodes. To me, that's fantastic because, like you said, consistency is key, especially within content. If you're not consistent, you're never. I don't want to say never because I don't like to be one of those people.
Yeah.
But you're not really gonna see success because consistency is what keeps your audience engaged because they know when stuff's coming. There's no lack of expectation. But again, to have 22 episodes within 25 weeks does showcase you're being consistent, especially while running and operating a business, especially with a podcast form where you're not having the same things pop up every day with the same people. Like you have to go out and find people, or people have to come to you. You have to schedule the questions around them. You have to make sure it's a time that works for everybody. Like this week we have Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Yep.
And like I know we didn't have an exact time plan, but this just worked out for both of us.
Yeah.
To get it in before then. So, I mean, like we were saying though, prior to this call or prior to the start of the podcast, it's hard in the moment not to be deterred by your viewership or the success of what you're posting. But from an outside perspective, it's great to have somebody look at you and kind of say, no, you're working hard. You've made progress. Like you're doing these key things that are important to your success that's going to come to you at some point. Keep going, keep driving. Because, if we all just looked for a quick success overnight, nobody would be successful.
Oh yeah.
So
that is absolutely
very key.
True. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that insight very much.
Of course. Anytime.
Cool. I had a next question. Where were we before? It wasn't a question. It was a point. So you mentioned that you could put a couple hours into an episode, or whether it's a YouTube episode, if you're a graphic designer, a piece of art, a podcast, whatever it is, with an asterisk next to Twitch, and like live streaming. Like all of these things are on demand. So like there's an archive of all 22 of my episodes. If somebody finds me today because of your episode, they have 21 pieces of content that they could go check out. So the same concept applies to YouTube. If you put 4 hours into a video that's 10 minutes long and it's your favorite thing and 3 people watch it, and then 3 weeks later you get put on by Tifu or whoever in Fortnite and they blow up your channel, and somebody goes back and they find your favorite episode that you ever put up and then it blows up, like it'll always be there and people can always just stumble upon it. So a lot of that, I don't know if that's necessarily considered organic growth or whatever. Like there's a lot of just opportunity out there when you consistently put content out. So
I would say it's organic if it's not the one video that explodes you.
Yes.
In the sense of, you have a viral video. Like for instance, November 1st, I had a viral Twitter video of some skeleton that was flying away to some music that nothing was planned. It just happened. It has 450,000 likes, 155,000 retweets. And none of that to me is organic. Like, yeah, I got it all on my own. Everybody's retweeting it and whatnot. But now the real organic growth you see from there is how my other tweets do, like what the following increase was.
Yeah.
Like that's where I really like to track the organic stuff. So I think that's just a great point for you to bring out. Like to go off of your point, you have somebody like Mr. Beast, who, of course, he's seen nothing but success recently in the sense of all of his videos. But this guy's been creating YouTube content for 7 years. His first video ever is literally a Minecraft video. It's about, like, if I remember correctly, it's like 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
That video probably had 5 to 100 views for 5 years, maybe 4 years, depending on, when his success really started to come around.
Right.
That video now has over 1 million views on his channel. Now that blows my mind that at some point, like you just said, but you have the 21 other podcasts, whether that's mine that somebody's listening to or somebody else is listening to one other one, they find mine. Again, they're going to go through your content if they're really into it. And that's where you really showcase and grow your repertoire, your portfolio, and you give your audience a chance to have more content to be engaged with. Because like you said, it could be your most favorite piece of art. It could be something you put a lot of time and effort into, and it may not just have done well at the time. But you never know if you're ahead of your time. You never know if you should know if you're behind your time, but you never know if you're ahead of your time and something could just explode later on. Now, the example, Mr. Beast, wasn't that his Minecraft video is probably amazing and it deserved all the viewership. It's a fact of his first ever video has over 1 million views now, and I guarantee you when he uploaded it and he had the 100 views, he never thought someday that would have over 1 million.
Yeah.
That's where it's continue to grow your craft to get better. I mean, he changed his content around. This is Minecraft. Now he does, the whole money stuff and whatever. Like it's great. I love watching his content because it gives you like a sense of, I wish that was me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And again though, that content has nothing to do with his original content, but it grew. But it showcases a community he was a part of. He put his time and effort into it. And again, he made progress. He figured out what works and what doesn't for him. And now he sees success for it. So that's why don't be so focused on the number. I know it's so much easier to say that when you're focusing on someone, especially as large as him.
Yeah.
But I just like to showcase that progress that he changed his community completely from video games to just an overall idea topic that's in general about it can happen to anybody type stuff, or that you wish it was you. But again, it's progression. It's figuring out what works for you, what doesn't. Keep going, be consistent, and figure it out type thing. Like, I don't know. It's much easier said than done.
Oh yeah.
Having that in the back of your mind so you know it's there in those moments is very crucial and very important to being a content creator. So
yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure if you know, but for those of you, I mean, most people who listen probably know, I'm a huge fan of Gary Vee. He recently,
I love Gary.
Oh, good. So you'll probably understand this. He puts this image up all the time, but he recently posted it again, and it's basically two guys are like mining underground, and one guy stops early, and the other guy, who was going way longer than him, like the one guy had a further. It's kind of hard without a visual, but
he's farther away in the progress than
yes.
the guy who gave up, who is a sliver of mining away from all the diamonds.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure you know this image.
Yep.
But like that's one of those things that like that you I mean, you could apply that to anything, but since we're specifically talking about content creation here, like you literally never know what or when or what is going to cause you or when you're going to blow up. And at any point, you could have a viral video that puts you on, or you could, look at all the people that people say Ninja or Tfue bless when they host them on Twitch or Mixer, or whatever it is. Like there are so many opportunities in this space that anything could happen, and there's not enough people, or yeah, I guess I'll say that way. There aren't enough people taking the full advantage of what they could be doing. If you're doing one thing in esports, I don't think you're doing enough. You should be doing 2, 3, 4, as many as you can, as thinly as you could spread yourself, because 95% of us are under 30, and 95% of us should be sleeping 6 hours at most a night and working as much as they can to build their personal brand or their company brand or whatever, and get your hand on as many things as you can, because you never know what's going to take off.
Absolutely. There was one thing you said in there is like, make sure you're not just doing one thing.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to point out with that to anybody that may be listening that thinks like, oh, I should have my hand in every cookie jar I possibly can. I want to use it. Have you ever watched Parks and Recreation?
I think you're the third person on this podcast that asked me if I have, and I still have not started that show.
I'll tell you this, it's so hard to get into a show you may not be totally interested in or have not watched, but that's a show. It's just funny. Yeah. I like the show. It's very similar to The Office in the sense of the humor it's in it.
Right.
But there's a guy in it, his name's Ron Swanson. He's supposed to be this hard-headed, he runs the whole department. He works within a government department, and he thinks that government is useless and everybody should be free to do their own thing. The guy has a hunting cabin that likes to spend his time in the woods away from people, doesn't like to talk to people, doesn't like to build friendships. But the way he lives his life is very straightforward. It's very easy to understand. And he says within the show at one point, never half-ass like one thing to be a part of several things, whole-ass one thing. Like go full in on one thing. But within this industry, what I'm saying with that is you should be involved in more than one little aspect. You should be making sure you're on multiple platforms, making sure that you're not just limiting yourself to one type of content by making like a niche for yourself. Like, you may be good at this, but make sure you're opening your audience to more things. But just make sure if you're going to do it, you're putting your full effort into all of that. Don't just think like, oh, because I'm a part of all this, like I'll see it someday with success. Make sure that if you want to upload several videos a day instead of just one a day, make sure you're putting the same amount of effort into both those videos and promoting both those videos, and making sure you're putting in the research to know that, you know, I have a high peak at 12 p.m. Eastern time, then I have another high peak at 6 p.m. Eastern time, things like that. So just don't half-ass it type stuff. Make sure you're whole in on it if you're going to do several things.
Yeah, no,
That's more where I was going with that.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the biggest thing is, like, I could never start to half-ass what I do with Sector 6 for the sake of growing my podcast. I'm like, it's pretty straightforward. You know, Sector 6 pays my bills. The podcast does not. So, like, that, having that type of mentality of, like, understanding, like, where you could sacrifice time. And, you know, that, for me, that sacrificing time is, I don't scroll through Instagram for 7 hours a day. I don't watch, you know, an entire season of something on Netflix or an entire series on Netflix in a week, because I just don't have the time to do it. Mostly because I get very much like I'm wasting time type of thing, and I'm weird like that. But, you know, you could always cut back on that. It doesn't need to be sleep. It could be the amount of leisure video games you're playing, or the amount of Netflix is probably the biggest thing that we would resonate to the most, because a lot of people will say don't play as many video games, but a lot of us, our career is based around that. So it's kind of hard to tell people to stop playing video games. But for me, I don't play a lot of video games anymore, mostly because that's not where my content / you know, business development resides. Like, everything is offline for me. So, you know, just find where to cut back and focus on your main thing. And there's this thing going around, and I don't know if it's recent or if it's just I've been under a bubble and I've never heard it before, but it's like, a lot of people, I've seen it posted from a lot of different people. To be successful in life, you need like one thing that pays your bills, one thing that keeps you creative, and one thing that keeps you in shape, I think are the 3 pillars. So start there and then find other things. And then as other important things grow for you, whether it's creative, you know, focus on your creative as that starts to take off. If it's something that's, health, obviously, you can only do so much to be healthy. And if you don't care about it, you don't care about it. That's on you. But, you know, if something starts to overpower what's paying your bills and you hate what's paying your bills now, you swap that out, and then you find another creative thing, and then you have 2 things that you enjoy, one to pay your bills and one to grow on the side. And, you know, that's how it was for me, because, you know, back when Sector 6 Esports Apparel was started, I worked full-time as a manager for Target, and I hated it. Like, I was good at it. It paid kind of my bills, but I hated it. We grew this. I switched Sector 6 with Target, pushed Target out, and now the podcast is where Sector 6 was, among multiple other things that I'm trying to do. But
it probably makes you feel so happy, too, that you're able to make that progression and get, you know, your business off the ground and replace that whole Sector 6 Target with Sector 6. And now you get to bring in something exciting of a podcast. Like, that's awesome. To me, I'll choose that path any day. Like, I think you got it. I think you did it just right. Congrats, man.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. It you know, looking back, it's one of those things that you don't take for granted enough. And I sit on this like a lot. You know, what is it now? I quit Target just over 2 years ago, and I feel like I've done more in the past 2 years since I quit Target than I did my entire life prior to quitting Target, because it was just that, not miserable, but like I wasn't going anywhere. And it's one of those things that, you know, once you get over that hump of understanding, you know, for me that was my growing up stage. But once you get over the hump of understanding that you don't necessarily need to rely on, quote unquote, the man to build yourself anything, you know, you feel so much better. And this is definitely turning more into a business thing than esports right now. So apologies for the misdirect, everybody. But yeah, I think, I don't know where we're going here.
Well, 2 things I want to touch on that you said that I think are very important is, like you just said, playing leisure video games. I meet a lot of people in this industry that sit there and say, you know, I spend hours doing what I do. How come I'm not seeing this type of success? I'm like, well, and this is something we say to a lot of our content creators and especially pro players, is why don't you stream? If your internet can't handle it or you don't have the right hardware, that's one thing. But if you have the hardware and the internet to stream, what prevents you from streaming when you're playing with your friends? Maybe watching your language a little bit, maybe having to, you can't just get up and walk away from your setup. You can't just do what you want to do, when you're playing video games leisurely, but you could still get away with playing video games while creating content.
Oh, yeah.
And that's important. And I think a lot of people don't think of that. Even I'm guilty of that. I could just sit down and stream anytime I'm playing with my IRL buddies, or I'm playing, when I say IRL for anybody here that may be listening, just in case they're not within our community, it's in real life, just people we know that aren't, within our communities. But like when you're playing with them or you're playing with your other friends, sometimes you just like to sit back and relax. And I challenge people to say and go out there and, stream. Like, even if you're getting 1 viewer to 5 viewers, you're still going to have a chance to grow your fan base on another platform, find ways to generate revenue, and create content. There's going to be content bits that come out of anytime you play content with people, always. And I think that's so important for people to understand, that you could have the funniest moment in any game happen just from recording with your friends. I remember one kid, when trick shotting was really being, like, Call of Duty trick shotting was growing and FaZe was doing something. A kid got in a lobby with 6 FaZe members. He took a javelin out on NW2 and put it like on the map Quarry. He used it in a very unique spot that nobody had ever seen before, and he wiped out the entire team in one javelin as they're going for trick shots. And of course, you're gonna have people on the ground, you're gonna have people up in buildings, up on higher parts, like, that are like all in different spots while trick shotting. I just remember that this person wasn't a very content person, but he recorded it. Like, he just recorded because, the importance of the people in the lobby with how big they were and how much they were growing. It was a different type thing he was doing. He was having fun with his friends, and he did this. And the video has over 1 million views today. And that, to me, is, in that moment, you may record it because the FaZe members in your lobby. But why not just do that anyway with your buddies? Because you never know when you're going to have a moment like that could change everything for you.
Yeah.
So to always be recording, to always be trying to create content, it could be tiring and frustrating in the sense of, like, why am I really doing this? Like, what benefit do I get? You'll never know. You might just see it happen for you someday. So why not give yourself the best probability of success possible? So, like, that was one point I wanted to touch on. The second one was, you said scrolling through your phone, whether it's Twitter or Instagram. I challenge people that I meet all the time. I don't try to use my phone because I have an iPhone. Yeah. So I get that little message of, you used your phone for X amount of time yesterday.
Oh, it's so depressing.
Right? Like, you sit there and you think, like, how did I waste that much time on my phone? So I look at most people and I say, try to challenge yourself to be off your phone 20 minutes more every week. Obviously you're not going to get to a point where you have 0 minutes on your phone.
Right.
Or 20 minutes more every day is what I mean, for every week, and track that process and progress. Most of the time I like to say 20%, but people and percentages don't really do great because math with people isn't always the greatest thing. So that's why I just like to say 20 minutes, very easy to follow. But you really kind of see how much more productive you are when you take 20 minutes out of your day from what you're used to doing with what makes you comfortable, and you go work on something you want to work on. You think about it, like, you put 20 more minutes of progress into what you're doing, and you'll see that much more success, as long as it's a good effort. Like, you're not just sitting there saying, okay, I'm not on my phone for 20 minutes. Like, it's that whole diamond picture you just said. Like, the guy was a sliver away from getting to all the diamonds he's been digging for, but he gives up. You have a guy that's a mile behind him that's just going to keep going because he's so determined.
Yep.
So that's something I like to live by. I know we've got off the topic of esports and went more into business and life, but it's important because they're hand in hand. They're important.
100% hand in hand. Like, so the for me, I don't love working from my phone, but I could do pretty much like save the design aspect of what I do, at least. Can't really do it from my phone, but I could do just about everything else I do in the office from my phone. Obviously, it's not as easy. So for me, I look at that number and I know it's like, well, I worked from home this day and I did a lot of my emails from my phone, so that's where a lot of the time comes in. So, like, I work on my phone a little bit more than the next person might, but cutting back, like, something that I really like to do when I'm in the office that makes me more productive is I put my phone on do not disturb, because every little notification will make me pick it up and look at it, be like, oh, I don't need to answer this. Those notifications will be there when you come back, like, in an hour, in a couple hours, when you're done with work for the day. If any emergency happened, people would call me, type thing. So I would, to further go into what you were saying about cutting back 20 minutes. If you're in the middle of doing something, like every time I record a podcast, my phone goes on do not disturb because I hate picking it up. But if you're ever at a point where you're in a session and you're creating content, or you're working, or you're doing whatever you want to do, and you're trying, you feel that you're not as productive as you can be, turn your phone on do not disturb and come back to it when you're done. It allows you to focus on what you're doing. and I don't know. That's something I've noticed has
No, I'm
made
with
me
you.
more
I was the
productive.
same way.
Yeah.
I was the same way in college. Put it on it because I know, and I had to tell myself this. I intentionally didn't buy an Apple Watch until I almost graduated college. Well, I mean, I did graduate, but until like about that time,
Yeah.
because I knew if my phone goes off in my pocket, I like to take it out and look at it in the moment. Like you said, you like to look at it, but you may not answer it right then and there.
Yep.
But that's taking away, like you now have lost your train of thought.
Yep.
You now are not as attached to what's going on. You're more focused on what's going on with your phone. So I intentionally didn't buy an Apple Watch because I knew I'd look at it on my wrist now instead of taking my phone out. It might, cut down the few seconds, but I'm going to be that much more inclined to look at it. Whereas if you put your phone on do not disturb, the whole vibration thing doesn't happen. It doesn't ring.
Yep.
All that kind of stuff. Like you just get it. So I think that's great advice. I love that. And I followed it too.
As far as the Apple Watch thing goes, I refuse to get one just because I've had this conversation internally. And does Mitch have one? Josh has one. My fiance has one. I don't think Mitch has one, but like I've talked about it with a ton of people, and I can't do it because I just know I'm going to be distracted by it, and I get very distracted very easily, so I have to mitigate that as much as I can. But I do love the idea of an Apple Watch, and at some point I'm sure I'll cave and get one. But
well, I'll tell you, the day I bought one, I was in a college class, and I was doing exactly what I said, where I have it on do not disturb. I wasn't focusing on it, and something very important was happening that I couldn't miss.
Yeah.
But because I had my phone on do not disturb, and I wasn't like trying to pay attention to it, I missed it. So I was someone that was like, why buy an Apple Watch when you have your phone? Like why am I going to go spend $200+ on a watch when I don't even wear a watch?
yeah,
Stuff like that. I'll tell you, I wear mine every day. I love it now. I'm not someone that normally goes with the trend. I normally just kind of do what I want to do type stuff.
same.
But I'm happy I have one. It tracks my motion, my progress. It can control music from your watch when you're in your car. If you have Bluetooth, but you can't do it from your dashboard. I mean, your radio on your car, stuff like that. Because some people have older cars than brand new stuff today. So like that's kind of a luxury. Things like that. It plays its little parts, but I don't blame you if you don't have one yet, because there's no need to have one if you don't really need one.
I definitely feel it's worth it for the people who are going to get the full use out of it. But that's one of those. I think at this point I've made it this far, and I'm just going to make it a point to not. I'm making my statement.
Be one of those people that's like, I have been successful without it, so I'm intentionally not going to buy it just to prove it.
Hashtag not an ad. By the way. Unless Apple's listening and they want it to be an ad, I'll sell out. You could give me a watch. That's cool.
Yeah, hashtag ad at that point.
For real. Jeez, I still have. I got one more thing. Because this has already been over an hour. I don't want to keep people on.
Really?
Too long.
Wow.
Yeah, we're at an hour and 7 minutes.
Wow.
I have written down here, I guess the most that I think will be beneficial to people listening. Personal, or what are your long-term goals, both with Dare and do the Dare one first, because I think I'd want to save the other one for after, but both Dare and personal goals for you for the next couple years.
So Dare, I want us to become a tier 1 esports organization that is driven by content first. And what I mean by that is take the 100 Thieves FaZe Clan approach. I'll say Liquid kind of goes into that as well. Our thing is we are a content brand that has esports aspects to it. I want us to be an esports organization that is content driven. So exactly with what 100 Thieves has, we've been doing our apparel for a long time. We've taken that whole idea of we want our apparel to be a lifestyle type apparel that's not related to gaming or specifically focused on gaming, so anybody can wear it. Whether I want to wear it, like I used to be an owner of the brand. I'm a management now within the brand, and still, if something looks too much like it's gaming apparel to me, I'm not going to wear it, even if it has our logo on it. Like I support what we do, but it's of course like there's likes and interests that I have.
Right.
So we want to appeal to an audience that has that, because most of the complaints we used to get, I mean, you probably even heard it at one point too, and you probably even advised people on it, is don't make it too focused on being around gaming.
Right.
Make it just be apparel that people want to wear. So we've kind of taken that approach, and I want to continue to expand on that. But we want to showcase to people what it's like to be a part of an organization and a family structure that's within video games, that you may not have the same path as a pro player. You may not have the same path as every other content creator. And we want to showcase those paths. So to get to a point where, there may be investment involved, we're in franchise leagues, there's more than just one content house. There's opportunities to create content around, skydiving out of all things, like things like that really progresses our brand, gives everybody within the brand more opportunity, and gives our fans more opportunities to be more involved with us and engage with us, interact, and even be a part of. So that's where I want Dare to be. No specific guideline on how that's to follow. There's things I need to work on within a business sense and esports sense before we get there. The other owners and other management, the brand itself. But for personal goals, I've been working within. I'm a huge hockey fan, like you brought up earlier. I've been working within the NHL gaming community to kind of grow their esports scene and structure. There's not a lot of experience within that industry. The NHL is trying to come up with a way that esports can work that's not exactly mimicking the NBA 2K league, because from the outside it doesn't look like there's a lot of success there. But clearly, if more NBA teams are getting involved, there's got to be something there that we don't know. So I'm trying to work with the NHL on how to grow that structure and make it a solid foundation and continue to build upon there. I'm working with the pro players within the industry and the content creators. With Dare, we actually picked people up because we're the largest organization now in the game. We want to work with the NHL, with hockey companies. We want to work with these content creators and pro players to help build and develop their scene, because it is a sport. It might be one of the smaller sports in North America, but there's still millions of fans behind it.
Oh yeah.
So to grow an esports structure from there, to try to be a pioneer within it, because there aren't really people that are there's really no tier 1 organizations within that scene. There's really no people with experience unless they've worked for like Face It, because Face It works with the NHL on their esports initiatives, that really understand and know their community, B, esports, and see how important content is for all three. And that's where I like to think that I kind of come in there and I could be the pioneer within that industry. So anyway, to get back to the point of it, I want to grow that industry and say I had help in doing that. And my goal was to always be a hockey player, like a professional hockey player, but obviously that ship has sailed. So
hear that.
To be involved in hockey in some way, to be involved in hockey some way, whether it's working for the NHL, an NHL organization, things of that nature, is kind of a personal goal of mine. There's a reason I love Liquid, like Team Liquid, for multiple reasons, but the people that own them, like the investment group that owns them, also owns the Washington Capitals, and that's my favorite hockey team. So that's why I really support Liquid, and I love what they do, regardless of whatever they do. It just really helps that they kick ass at everything they do, whether it's content or having good teams.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's more of my personal goal, is to continue to find ways for the NHL to grow their game, grow their sport itself, and while also building my name, my reputation, my brand, things of that nature, trying to stay consistent and constant with that. But personal goal, be in the NHL in some way, shape, or form, grow Dare and get Dare to where I want it to be, where the ownership and other management want it to be, where it needs to be competitive, and kind of keep building from there.
Well, I like it. I feel like I heard about the NHL getting into the esports space recently, a couple months ago maybe, and I've always been interested in the NHL. I'm really bad at following sports. I'm lucky if I watch a quarter of the Giants games, because I'm a Giants fan, football Giants fan.
Okay, I gotcha. All right. Listen, your team kicks my team's butt every time we're in the Super Bowl. I'm not a huge football guy.
I'm going to end this podcast here. I'll see you guys later.
Listen, I am, but I'm not one of those guys that's like, yeah, the Patriots are the best ever. Like, I understand. Again, I'm not a huge football fan, so it's like I don't ever want to be that guy.
Yeah, I hear you. So where was I? Oh, so coming up, I was always interested in hockey, and then I found out very quickly I couldn't skate for my life. So I was like, let's not get into this. I'll watch football. But at any rate, I've always been a huge Devils fan. Not as obviously big as I used to be, because like I said, I don't watch sports as much. But when they announced that when there were rumblings, I guess, that they were going to get into esports and NHL might be a title, who makes that game? Is that 2K also?
No, that's EA.
EA, okay. Was it ever at one point 2K?
2K did make the series. It was like NHL 2K,
okay.
Like 2K5, 2K10, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, at any rate, I was super interested because I've always kind of had an interest in hockey. I would really like to see how that structure plays out, because, like you said, from the outside looking in, 2K, the NBA 2K league, it looks like it. I don't know if it's struggling, but it definitely doesn't look like it grew since it started.
It didn't take the pop that they hope it would have. I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. And I think it's just because there's a lot of people that are coming from the outside in.
Yep.
And I think that'll start to settle out as people get swapped around, and you'll have more esports people running the ship as opposed to and the money people just being the money people. I think that'll sort itself out. But
For sure.
I'm super interested to see, if the NHL puts a league together in esports. I'd be super interested to see how that plays out.
Well, the only thing they do is they do a yearly tournament that's called the NHL Gaming World Championships.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And towards like February or March, they've done it the last 2 years now, and they've made wicked progression. I say wicked. I don't know why. I found out that's a very regional word to use.
Is it?
You're originally from New York, right?
Yeah.
So we're both from New York originally. Like, I'm not from down by Long Island. I'm not sure if that's exactly where you're from.
Yeah,
most
Long
people are that I talk to. Okay,
Yeah.
So I'm from way up north. I'm on the border of Canada. I'm like I'm not Buffalo. You keep going, very tip top of the state.
Okay.
And up there, the word wicked used, but either way, it's where was I going with this? So content is very important, and I think that's where the NBA and the NBA 2K League may not have taken full advantage of how they should be building personalities and driving content, while also being they've made it seem very exclusive to the NBA.
Yes.
Like they don't want it to be a part of it. They want it to be like an NBA thing,
Yes.
but not incorporate the game of basketball into it. So I think the NHL is trying to figure something out with that, where they're trying to form esports within it, and they're trying to figure out exactly how can we go about doing this properly without wasting, millions of dollars. And I don't like to use the word wasting. I'm just, spending millions of dollars without finding success in it. So they're doing this yearly tournament, and where it's region based of USA, Canada, and Europe. The top 8 people in Canada all come together in Toronto, and they face each other, and the top 2 from there go to Las Vegas. The top 2 from the US after the top 8 all compete against each other, do that. And now this is broadcasted on NBCSN, Sportsnet. There's a company over in Europe that I'm blanking on, but they're all broadcasted on major networks, put up on YouTube channels. The NHL promotes it on their main page. They're trying to go hand in hand with each other. And that's where I want to continue to convince the NHL that getting NHL players involved and NHL organizations involved is important. The Capitals just signed a professional player in the industry. They are the first NHL organization to sign a player of their own. Like, they're hosting a 6v6 tournament, which means you pick one guy on the ice and you play as that guy, but you create your own custom character. You can't edit attributes and stuff, but you get to make your height and weight, your looks, your name, jersey number, all that stuff. They're the first organization to take that route because it is a team sport, and they're trying to find a way to get more people involved. There's more personalities, there's more content, there's more storylines, there's things that can be built on there. So they're trying to find the right path without just saying, all right, NHL teams get involved, sign people, have them all play against each other, and just go from there. And that's where I'm happy the NHL is doing that. But again, they need to make sure that content stays first. And I think that's where the NBA 2K League has kind of went a little bit different, to think, we don't want to be exactly associated with the NBA. Like, we'll use the name because it's, it is a part of the NBA, but we don't want the game of basketball to get into the virtual game of basketball.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a mistake, but what do I know? Like, I'm not the one doing the research and knowing the whole market and whatnot. So I'm just going off of more of what I think. But either way.
No, that makes sense. I don't know. I'm super interested to see what happens within the NHL. Should be a lot of fun. I mean, how involved are you? Like, is it just...
Very involved?
Okay.
So for instance, with Dare, we signed, I think off the top of my head, 7 guys, 3 pro players and 4 content guys. These 4 content guys are, let's say there's the top 10 creators. They are in the top 6 of the largest viewership, whether it's consistency on Twitch. Now, the NHL is a small sport, a smaller professional sport.
Yeah.
Its gaming community is really small. These guys all hold over 100 concurrent viewers on Twitch. Now, that is a lot for that industry.
Right.
There's only one person that gets more than that, and he averages anywhere from 200 to 400 depending on the day. But he's with his own management agency, has all of his own stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we went out and got all those guys. We went out and got the 3 top performing pro players that consistently win the tournaments and whatnot. And again, they're trying to work with me because, again, I'm someone that's experienced in the field of esports and content, and we're trying to grow the actual community and grow the opportunities within it. So they're all kind of taking not a backseat where they can all be important in their own ways and do things on their own. They're trying to work hand in hand with Dare and myself to grow the community because it can become more. And that's where I want to make sure I'm as involved as possible. Like that's kind of like my scene. It used to be Call of Duty was my thing.
Right.
Like I'd make sure Call of Duty's trying to do what it does, or whether it's Rainbow Six in its starting time and things like that. Like I want to make sure that the NHL scene grows, that it can become something. Because again, it's a goal of mine to be involved with the NHL at in some way, shape, or form. And I was involved in helping them make this esports structure their very first year, not so much their second year, because they kind of wanted to take their own path and try it, which I give them credit. They did a great job. But I want to make sure that the scene continues to develop. Content creators know what's important and what's not important, what type of deals they should be trying to go for if they're working with brands or organizations. Pro players, like how they should be handling themselves, practicing, reviewing their footage, how they should be presenting themselves in the public image, how they should be creating content, because content, again, is king, like most people will say. So, because you're not going to be a pro player forever. Everybody kind of knows that. So it's find a way to make a living without that as well. But I'm very in touch with it. I want it to be successful. I'm very greedy in that sense of I want to be involved. I'm going to make sure I'm involved. I want it to be successful, and I'm going to try my best to make sure it is.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think
it's a game I also play hours every day. Yeah. So
I think so. Something I was thinking about just now. I think the NHL getting into esports, the NBA being in esports, FIFA is in esports, Madden is I mean the NFL. Well, the NFL isn't. Is the NFL really in esports, or is it just Madden tournaments?
The NFL is, to my knowledge. I haven't done a lot of research on the football scene.
Definitely not
as
deep as the NBA.
Well, I think
I
almost said NHL. I think NFL organizations sign players.
Okay.
Like, I think they do in that industry. I could be wrong, but from what I saw a few years ago, like I used to work with a guy at an organization I used to be a part of called Simplicity that he loved Madden. We even had a Madden player at the time. I just never was really in touch with it because, again, I'm not a huge football guy.
Yeah.
So I just didn't keep up with it much. But they are in. Like, I know it's on TV, the Madden gaming championships that they do.
Yeah.
So like they are doing esports to an extent.
At any rate, so there's 4, I guess, call them the 4 sports,
major North American sports. Yeah.
Yeah, in that are getting into or in esports. I think a big thing that the people who are holding back, like for example, the NBA associating itself with the 2K League more, like the people that are holding those kind of deal points back should really think about the fact that every year there is more. I hate Gen Z, millennial, whatever generation these kids are. There's more of those kids coming in, and more of the, we'll say, boomers on their way out. So the people that are more like used to the TV, radio type things are, I mean, to be blunt, are either getting old and dying or just no longer interested in it.
Yes.
And the newer kids coming in are more used to seeing social media, seeing esports or video games in general, things not on TV like that. I think all that hopefully should be considered with, should the NHL get involved more in esports? Should the NBA support the 2K League to like more than they already are? Like I hope that those things are being considered for the long term.
And I agree with you. I mean, we're in a tech savvy industry.
Yes.
And we're looking at people of a younger generation, and we're trying to have them as involved as possible. You're looking at a sport that's within a video game where people have an option to watch the real sport or watch a video game.
Yes.
Now, I think 9 times out of 10, you're going to get everybody that says watch the real sport. Now, if you ask kids which one, not kids mostly, but a younger generation, do they prefer to play the sport or play a video game portion of the sport? You're going to see a more even split. In the sense of it's not 9 out of 10. You might see 6 out of 10 say I'd rather play the sport than like play the video game, or it might be vice versa, like 4 out of 10. So I think that's where that progression has to be made, that let's get the real sport involved and have it, make it seem like it's a part of it. Make it seem that it is important, that it's not a secondhand. Our generation, like we're dumb when it comes to certain things, or our generations is what I should use. But we can see right through advertisement, right through commercial, right through money plots to try to make as much money as possible. Like we're not dumb. Like again, we're very tech savvy.
Yeah.
So if we see that, I'll use the NHL because I don't want to put any other market on a quote unquote blast. But if the NHL went out and just tried to find ways to make money, like esports is a way for, businesses to try to make money or to grow eyes on their sport so they can find ways to make more money in other areas. Like, of course, that's a business, but the second you treat it like it's, this isn't really important to us and we don't want to hurt our first brand, so we don't want to treat it like it's priority, but we want you guys to treat it like it's priority or that it's important. That's the second you start to sniff it out and you're like, I don't really know. So that's why I don't want the NHL to fully go and say, we don't want the sport of hockey involved with the video game aspect of hockey. We want you to choose one or the other, or try to support both the best way you can without making it look like we're trying to put our both into the best we can.
Right.
So I just think that's important. And I don't ever want to see the NHL do it. And I hope the NBA, again, I could be totally wrong. I don't follow the 2K league very well.
Yeah.
I just see posts of it. And that's like, I thought it was the coolest idea. I was trying to go for jobs in it at first. And it didn't really fit for what I was trying to do after like further thought. But I just haven't seen it be at the level it should be, especially when I follow a lot of 2K people.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the sport, I don't even know if we could put a word to what that industry is. The sporting industry getting involved in esports is definitely something that I will be watching very closely the next 12 to 18 months. So should be a lot of fun. I think it's been interesting to say the least, and there's definitely a lot of room for growth. So I'm excited to see what happens.
For sure. And I agree.
As we wrap that long-winded question up as well, this one, I promise, this is we're nearing the end here, fellas. And
we might have to do a part 2 at some point.
We might have to do a part. I'm down to do a part 2 when sporting leagues get more involved in esports. We could do a part 2 and talk about that, because there'll be a lot to talk about, I'm sure. That'd
be exciting for sure. Absolutely.
At any rate, where is the best place? I think we touched on this maybe a little bit an hour and a half ago. What is the best place for people to get a hold of you personally, and then Dare as well?
So to myself, in a casual form, it's always Twitter. It's for me, it's just B Cortese EA. Don't know where the EA ever came from. I don't know why I ever put it there. It's just there. Cortese was taken, and I was just like, I'll just put 2 letters at the end. I play NHL, and it's an EA game, so I'll do that. I think that's where it came from. But that Twitter is for casual, for business things. It's literally my Twitter of bcortesea@gmail.com. I used to do the whole Dare Rising email stuff, like Cortese at darerising.gg. I don't really do that anymore. I like having my own little email account that stays consistent with my branding.
Yeah.
And it's just there. Like, I'm a part of Dare, I love Dare, all that kind of stuff. And if I do Dare related stuff, I normally use our Dare email of just business at darerising.gg. But Twitter is always the best place to see what we're doing. Email is always the best way to get a hold of somebody. At least that's the way I see it. I don't know about you, Zach, but that's the way I'm about it.
No, I'm definitely in the same boat. Like for Twitter, like my DMs are open. I try to be as responsive as I can on Twitter, but it's not as conducive to like getting back to people, especially because you could turn and mark an email as unread, and mentally I'll do that, and it's a reminder to do whatever's in that email. You can't do that on Twitter, and like DMs get like, I don't like to use the word flooded because I feel like I'm boasting about DMs, but if I get 5 to 10 DMs a day, that first person to DM me, I don't even see that on my page because you can only see so many, so I have to scroll.
Yep.
Now, again, this is definitely not a complaint. It's more of, it's not as efficient to get a hold of somebody versus email, where I have to click and open that email and it sits in my unread box. If Twitter can make it so that there's an unread section, boy, I would use Twitter way more often. But
something. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No. That was it. That was the end of it. That was perfect timing.
Well, the thing is, I'll add this in real quickly. I know we've been going on for a while.
You're good.
I want to promote LinkedIn more. I use my LinkedIn every day, and I'm sure you use yours too.
Oh yeah.
And I think that our industry needs to learn at a younger age to use LinkedIn to a better advantage.
Yes.
And that's where I think that people miss that. I was advised by someone a couple years ago, LinkedIn is the platform for anything professional, whether people want to get a hold of you or you want to get a hold of somebody. LinkedIn's normally a better way than just an email, because LinkedIn showcases who you are, what you're a part of, your accomplishments. It's very easy for someone to find all about you in one place.
Yes.
Along with that message. So I think plus LinkedIn limits you within a message that you send to somebody of X amount of characters. So it limits you from making a very wordy, lengthy email that may not have a lot of important aspects to it.
Right.
Plus, again, it's a more welcoming environment. People know what you're on there for is professional matters.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean,
that is very important. I'm on there, you're on there for sure. So
LinkedIn has made a few strides here recently, or maybe not the platform. It kind of just naturally happened where there's a lot of content on there.
Yep.
It's super, super intuitive for like building personal brand.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely get on LinkedIn. I don't advertise my LinkedIn very often. I actually just tweeted about it the other day, but both Bailey and I are on LinkedIn. So hit us up there for sure. LinkedIn, for sure. I like it. LinkedIn is very interesting. We're not going to go down this rabbit hole.
Yes.
It is clean. Yeah, it is. We'll save this one for the part 2. We'll look at LinkedIn's growth.
I'm for that.
But subscribe for part 2, because there will be a part 2. And if you've listened this far and you aren't subscribed, please be sure to do so. It helps me grow the podcast. It helps me understand if I made good content or not. And it lets me know that you might come back. So, yeah, hit that subscribe button on whatever listening platform or whatever it is that you listen to this on. And I guess that's it. Bailey, thanks for coming on.
Definitely subscribe to it. Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, man.
And I'll see you all in the next one. Have a great day.